And we are live here on the Extra Point Show presented to you by Fantasy Points, heading in already to week 11. My name is Nick. I'm here with Major. Every single week we have this show where we cover player prop bets, basically from the Underdog Fantasy app. But before we jump into any of that, Major, what's up, man? What's good?
Man, nothing much, dude. Just trying to get ready for this week. I can't believe it's already week 11, man. We're like this season's going so fast. We're already done.
I know, like I the fact that I'm looking at like the Thanksgiving schedule for next week,
Exactly.
I'm like, I thought it was just Halloween, and I thought it was just like my birthday was in October. It's just like all these things just keep flying by, and we're trucking along in the fantasy world and the NFL in general. But if you guys are new to this show, how it works is we cover the Underdog Fantasy app, which is a ton of fun to play on. If you are unfamiliar, go to Underdog Fantasy on your web browser. You can go to the App Store, type in Underdog Fantasy. And how this show works is we look at a bunch of different player prop bets, and we look at a stat for that specific player, and we say this guy's going to go higher or lower than the given stat. You just have to pair at least two, place your bet, and then you are in business. If you use the promo code Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS, you will get a deposit matchup up to $100. So good incentive there. You want to throw down $10, you'll have 20 to play with, and etc. from there. So I'll have four. Major will have four. Maybe you like all of his. Maybe you like a mix of ours. But it's always fun to bet on Sundays outside of the fantasy world. So Major, what's the first bet you like today on the Underdog Fantasy app?
Let's see here. We're gonna go with Saquon Barkley, higher than 98.5 rushing yards. He's coming off a monster game against the worst rushing defense last week in the Texans. Rushed for 152 yards and a TD. This week, Barkley will be facing the second worst rush defense, giving up 161 yards per game. So look for Barkley to continue that hot streak. He's beat this mark 4 times this season. So look for him to beat that 98.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, so Barkley has been awesome because a lot of people coming into the season were starting to throw the typical, hey, he hasn't won me my fantasy leagues, he's washed, like he's not going to return to form. In the past, this guy for the fantasy world was a top one or two dynasty running
Always.
back, and
Yep.
then everybody, because he's been hurt, gave up on him. It seemed like not everybody, but that was kind of in the air. So it's been great to see him bounce back, probably comeback player of the year, unless I'm missing somebody. But yeah, it's been awesome, and you have to, because he's a massive piece of that offense. You have to go with the positives on what he's going to bring on a Sunday. Um, I,
Absolutely.
I tell you every week I'm always way too optimistic, so I'm making sure I have some lowers on this show. For
Good
one,
job. Good job.
it took everything in me. I started the research on Monday, and just every day trying to find these lowers, because it's hard for me to do it. But
Yeah.
the first one I'm going to go here. Deonta Foreman lower than 62.5 rushing and receiving yards. And you
Mm,
and I, Major, we always say we like these stat combinations because it gives you a little bit safer of a floor, and you can go from there. Usually on the higher side, but when we're looking at what the rushing bar was set at on the app, it was 57.5. So going up to 62.5, combining receptions, he's only had 4 receptions across his last 4 games, and one of those games was a 3 reception day. So he's not really used in the passing game. So I'm not concerned about that. But he's actually been rushing the ball great. 2 games of 118 rushing yards as of recent. Last week, 130. But two things stand out to me. Number one, he was scripted out against Cincinnati in week 9. He carried the ball 7 times for 23 yards. So he barely touched the ball because of how that game script went against the Bengals. Now they play the Ravens, who are a decent football team, but the Ravens defense is giving up the third least rushing yards per game on the year. And they recently took my boy Roquan Smith from Chicago and added him to the defense. So their defense got
right.
even better. So factoring in both of those things, the potential game script to be similar to the Bengals, great run defense. I'm going to go Deonta Foreman lower than 62.5 rushing receiving.
Man, I don't know about that one. He's running good, man. Like
He is.
I,
He is.
I was I was high on him when he first came into the league and he had the injuries and all that stuff. But he's kind of bounced back a little bit. So last week he ran for 130 yards on 31 carries. Like that's That's a lot of touches. So
It is, yeah.
it seems like they're going through him a little bit on the offense. So man, I'm gonna push back a little bit. I'm gonna say he gonna beat that mark, man.
All right, we'll have to recap that one, but you have to give the guy credit because again, nobody was speaking super highly of him coming into the
Exactly.
year. We were like, he's the McCaffrey backup, and then out of nowhere, sometimes this is for the fantasy world why you roster those backups because there's trades and there's injuries, and this guy's been falling into big work, and just like last season, filling in for Derrick Henry, he's filling in for a good role again. So we'll have to see if Roquan Smith,
Let's see
ex
what
Chicago Bear, and the Ravens beat him up today or not.
happens.
What's your second one that you like for today?
All right, my second one, I'm gonna go with Matt Ryan, lower than 237 and a half total yards. Um, Matt played well last week. He played well enough to be named a starter once again. It seems like he's on a week by week. He has to earn his job every week. Last week he had 21 for 28,
Mhm.
222 yards and a TD, and he even ran for 38 yards and a TD. Like Matt Ryan's out here looking like Justin Fields,
Yeah.
Uh, but the Eagles are coming off their first L, man. So when a team take that first loss, they want to come back and get a little redemption, and Philly's only giving up 178 yards per game in the quarterback. So I'm gonna go with that Philly defense. I think they're gonna be playing with a little battery in their back this week.
I think so too, especially after last week. I mean, that was not something anybody expected. I don't think most of us were expecting to see a post game video clip of Taylor Heineke on the plane with the chains on, sipping Bush Light, and everybody's hyping him up and stuff. I didn't expect that. Yeah, exactly. But the Eagles, they got to have some fire in their chest just after that because obviously that's not the way they wanted to take that L. And they were driving in that game too. Defense wasn't what they wanted it to be either. But in the fantasy world, Eagles give up the second least points per game to the quarterback position. You mentioned the passing yards given up per game. That's the second least. So it's not a friendly quarterback matchup. Even Heineke last week, it's not like he threw for 303 touchdowns or something like that. They won the game in several different ways beyond the quarterback position. So
Right.
I'm with you on Matt Ryan. Were you surprised that after being benched for 2 games, Jeff Saturday came in and was like, "Nah, this is our guy."
I was a little surprised, but it was. I'm happy for Matt because it seemed like he really, he was playing with what he had. I don't think he did anything that was out of bounds. So him being benched was, a bit much. Being that he's not a, I'm gonna say he's a Hall of Famer, but he's a mid tier like quarter. He's a pretty good quarterback. So I don't know why they like benched him, but I think Matt it boosts all the receivers like Percy. I mean what's his name?
Harris,
Paris
Paris
Campbell.
Campbell. Yeah,
Paris
yeah.
Campbell had a nice game. Um Pittman had a nice game, so it helped everyone out because they were not running, they were not passing the ball at all. So let's see if he can keep it up.
Yeah, for the fantasy world, I think, maybe you don't play Matt Ryan ever in your quarterback position, but it does help Michael Pittman and
I
Paris
have to
Campbell.
in one of my leagues, man. And
I mean,
Scott Fish, I have to. It's like
yeah,
I picked the worst quarterbacks.
yeah, you got to do what you got to do when it comes to that sort of situation. But everybody else, it boosts their value because Sam Ellinger was destroying anybody you wanted to play. You couldn't play Pittman, couldn't play Campbell, couldn't play Pierce, you couldn't play any of those guys. So fantasy perspective, that was solid to see. But second one, I'm going to be spicy, maybe twice in a row here.
Uh-oh.
But and this guy still might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, you can make the argument maybe it's Jefferson, maybe it's this guy, but I'm gonna go Devontae Adams lower than 78.5 receiving yards. So again, spicy take, especially with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow on the IR. There's the chance that he has his like third game of 17 targets in this one, but and his last 2 games he went off 146 and 126 receiving yards. But he's been under this mark, this mark 3 times this season, and it was actually under 40 yards 3 times. So he's not like completely bulletproof in terms of like busting on a week for his statistics. He's been dealing with an abdomen issue of some sort, could potentially play a factor. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. We got one of those on the fantasy point staff already, so leave it to Edwin over there. But in
Right.
the fantasy world, the Broncos give up the second least points per game wide receivers and give up the least passing yards per game. So it's a tougher matchup when it comes to beating that Broncos secondary. And we've seen some down weeks, and it's not necessarily on Devontae Adams. It's more on Derek Carr. So
Right.
in the event that he faces this tough defense against the pass, it's going to be a Derek Carr thing. So I think the chance of Devontae Adams still having a good game, let's say he goes 6 for 65 and a touchdown, that's still a fine game. But I'm going to go under that 78.5 receiving mark. Spicy take, but the matchup I'm just trying to play in.
I'm not mad at you, man. Pat Surtain is balling over there, man. Like he may be the best corner in the league right now, and that secondary is not a joke, man. Like the Denver defense is playing ball right now, so I'm gonna go with you on that one. I'm not mad at that one, so I'm gonna go with you. And I think he bought that last 2 weeks, but the Raiders' offense is so inconsistent. It's like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they, they can't get on track for some reason. Maybe it's the coach. I don't know, but it's kind of ugly out there in Vegas right now. So I'm gonna go with you on that one. I don't think that's too spicy. I like that one.
And they might try to win the game on the ground. I mean, Jacobs has had a
Yeah,
surprisingly good season. I don't think
yeah.
anybody, thinks he's necessarily like a bad running back, but the games he's had this year have really boosted the Raiders offense. So maybe they try to win on the ground more so than forcing it against certain and the rest of those guys through the air. But um what's your next one on the slate for today?
Yeah, so for my third pick, I'm gonna go with you with one of your guys. I'm gonna go with your boy. I'm gonna go with Justin Fields, higher than
Ooh,
254 total yards.
I like this.
Hey, the man is balling out of control. Like he's finished the last 2 weeks as QB1. He posted 615 yards and 8 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks total. That's a lot of
That's
numbers we're
decent.
talking about right now. And
He
he's facing the worst defense. Like the Falcons they're not stopping anyone right now. They're giving up a total of 400 yards a game. So I think Justin Fields is going to have himself another one of those games where he's passing for like 170 and he's rushing for like 150.
he's been going crazy,
Yeah,
And my next pick actually is Justin Fields as well. It has to go along
nice.
with this, but I'm trying to. Can you relate to this at all? Because this is the first time I can relate as just a Chicago sports fan. So when I love the Bulls and I like DeRozan, I like Levine, and I like to watch them play, but like I hate to watch them lose. And I'm a Chicago White Sox fan. Love Luis Robert, my favorite baseball player probably, but I hate watching them lose. When Justin Fields has been playing the way he's been playing lately, as a Bears fan, like it almost feels like, oh, it's okay we're losing because we didn't have high expectations just because of how fun he is to watch. And that's like one of the first times I'm saying that about any sports team, that I'm okay with them losing because the games are just fun to watch.
I think you kinda have to say that as a Chicago fan. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like the only thing you guys have going right now is like Justin Fields. The L's, like we can take those because my quarterback is balling. And one more point, I like they haven't even connected with Claypool yet. So I think
No,
he hasn't even got to that ceiling yet. Him and Claypool hasn't really connected. They've been throwing his way a lot. I think he had like 6 or 7 targets last week. So look for him to start connecting with Claypool. And Claypool, he's gonna get you those chunk yards. He'll get you 40, 30 yards of reception. So that I'm happy for you guys. I think you guys are starting to come on around, this time of the year. Next year they're going to be looking way better. So shout out to your Bears, man.
yeah. Hopefully they do the right thing though, because they have a lot of money next year and they'll have draft picks, but like do the right thing. But
I
I'm
think
gonna go
people
with.
may want to play with him. I think they're going to get some people in free agency.
I think so too. And Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney are pretty good receivers. They probably can use an alpha still. I think out of those two guys, I think they
Right.
can really add somebody. And then offensive line, if they can just drastically improve that,
They
they'll be a
have
different offense. Yeah.
right.
Um, I'm going to stick with Justin Fields, so I'm going to go higher than 11.5 rushing attempts. So since the shift in Justin Fields' play, which is look like a shift in the playbook, weeks 5 through 10, his 70 rushing attempts are 31 more than any other quarterback in the NFL.
Mm,
He has 602 rushing yards during that 5 to 10 span, which is also a category he leads. And the second quarterback has 319, so like nearly half. He has 5 rushing touchdowns across his last 4 games. 4 out of 5 of the Bears' last games, he's been above this mark, with the one game that he didn't hit this mark being that Dallas game that the Bears had to really chase that game. They were falling behind far in the scoreboard. So Justin Fields running the ball. There's so many design plays for him to do it, but also he's been reading the field well that, hey, I'm not going to force these interceptions that I have earlier this season and last season. I'm going to utilize my legs to get some yards. So I'm going to go with him higher than 11.5 rushing attempts.
I'm with you on that. Like I said, he's balling right now. He's like doing what Lamar was doing, you know what I mean? So I think he's have every opportunity, and he's making really good decisions. Like you said, he's like not forcing the ball anymore. He's like, if I don't have it, I'm going to use my legs. So I think he's going to have to run a little bit this week.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said with Atlanta too, like they're a defense that has been getting exposed this year.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head how many guys they face have been like this sort of rushing profile quarterback, but I don't expect them to like have this massive. I'm not even going to say that just because I'm going to jinx myself. But
I'm about to say, knock on
what's your next one? I want another good game, so I'm not going to jinx it anymore. Let's get
exactly.
to your next one.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna go with this one hurts me, man, because I'm a big Cal Pitts fan, man. Like Cal Pitts lower than 38.5 receiving yards. He's only beat that mark 3 times this season. He's only had over 30 yards 3 times this season. I mean, like that's crazy to me that Cal Pitts has only had 30 yards twice this season.
You'd be canceled if you said that before the season started. If you said Kyle
Seriously,
Pitts is only going to have these games, they'd be like, get this guy off of Twitter or something.
yeah, but it's really not his fault. He's
Yeah, no.
he's finding his way. He's getting open, but Mariota is like a little too high, a little too low, a little too to the left, a little to the right. He's missing him on every time he gets open. It's so sad to see. Hopefully, he keeps his head in the game and he can like keep going. But he's facing the Bears defense that's only giving up 32 receiving yards to tight ends per game. So, to me, that math is leaning towards the Bears defense doing some work. So, I'm giving some love to the Bears today. I ain't really mean to. It just kind of happened that way. So shout out to my boy Nick right
Yeah,
here.
there you go.
But what you think about Kyle Pitts?
Love Kyle Pitts, love the talent. Still big time believer in his future, but I'm with you, man. I'm looking at the last 3 weeks. I looked at the targets, and I'm like, the targets look good, 9, 7, and 8. But then,
Yeah,
like you said, he seems to be missing them because he caught 5 of 9, so just over 50%. 2 of 7, 2 of 8. He's getting targets, but are they catchable targets? I'd be curious to actually go and look that one up, but. You mentioned the yards the Bears give the tight ends per game. Fantasy world, the 5th least points per game. So that kind of just paints the picture that it's not this easy matchup. I really can't recall just being a fan and watching games, any tight end really like tear us up. But I'm with you, man. It's hard to trust. It's hard to trust him to have a good yardage day. It's interesting to look at like the sleeper app because everything is color coded. And when you look at his yardage, everything is in red, and
right.
red is bad. I mean, he has 2 weeks of 80 plus receiving yards, but everything else is like under 30 yards every other game. It's wild just to see all that red with Kyle Pitts. So I agree with you, man. It's hard to
Yeah.
trust it.
When do you think Atlanta makes that move? I mean, if you're playing fantasy, Marcus Mariota, he's what, like quarterback? What is he? Third quarterback, like 13? Not too bad. 15, 13, 15 around there. When are they going to make that move? Because they have a nice little rookie there, and Ritter, and you got to be able to throw the ball in the NFL. Like for some reason, Marcus he. I don't know. It's bad, man. He's missing every time he throws the ball, and he's missing bad. It's like he can't see.
Yeah, I think that they're on a 2-game losing streak, the Falcons. The Buccaneers are 5-5. The Falcons are 4-6. So I don't think they expected to compete, but at one point they were at the top of this division. So I think if they start winning some games again, they're probably going to stay with Mariota. But if that gap between the Buccaneers and the Falcons starts getting wider, then I can see them maybe testing out Ritter to say, hey, we got to see if this guy is our guy for next year or not, or how we're going to operate. So I think it depends on that gap between the Buccaneers and the Falcons in that NFC South. That would be my guess there.
Yeah, yeah,
My last one of the day, going to go Chris Olave, higher than 4.5 receptions. I don't know if they think like Jalen Ramsey is going to shadow him the entire game, or why the bar is kind of low, because he's been having a very solid season for the Saints. Down game, though, last week with 3 receptions, but he's hit 5 receptions, which is this mark the prior 3 games in a row. He's top 10 in targets. He averages 8.6 per game, top 12 in receiving yards, 73.1 average there per game. Opportunities are big with splash plays. He's number 2 in both air yards and deep targets. So there's a lot of positives in the direction of the rookie Chris Olave. I think he's been a pleasant surprise this season for the redraft world as a rookie. The Rams give up the 9th most points per game for wide receivers in the fantasy world. That just, again, paints a friendlier matchup than we might think about, because we think about the Rams, the Super Bowl Rams, the Jalen Ramsey narratives, and they're actually not super tough against wide receivers for fantasy. So I'm going to go with Chris Olave higher than 4.5 receptions.
Yeah, to me that's a easy call, man. That's a good one. I don't know how you got to that before me, but yeah, like you said, the last 3 weeks he's getting those targets. So just got to convert them now. And Andy Dalton is one of those quarterbacks a little inconsistent as well. You got Jameis there too. That's a little inconsistent, so it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen week to week. But Olave shocked me. I thought it was going to take him a year or two just because he's like a slender receiver, but
Yeah.
he's out there. He's the wide receiver 1 out there, and he has some like pretty big names over there that he's playing above, and Landry and Thomas. So I'm with you 100% on that one, man.
I'm curious, just on a side note with the Saints. We saw, I don't know if you saw, but there was a video came out. Jameis Winston was getting interviewed, and he said it hurts his soul that he got benched because he said injuries shouldn't make you lose your job. He's like, you should just lose your job, But I mean, on the flip side, you can say, well, if these guys are at practice every day, maybe one guy's beating the other out. And any thoughts on that situation before we close out this Saints talk here?
Yeah, absolutely. My high school coach used to always say, "Don't get hurt." That's we say, "Don't get hurt." Shout out to Coach Blunt, man. But it was I mean, I kind of feel him, but it is what it is. Him and Andy Dalton are pretty much the same guy when you kind of look at it. But yeah, I think Winston is funny, man. He's just a funny character. I like when he talks. I like his interviews. He's always doing something weird. So I'm a Winston fan just because he's a weirdo.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Enough said. Enough said. But again, if you guys are unfamiliar with the app, go to your web browser, Underdog Fantasy, and you can also find it on your app store. Make sure to use that promo code, though. You don't want to deposit something and not get that matchup. So fantasy points, fantasy PTS for that promo code. Major, week 11, anything else as we close out this show for today?
Yeah, man. Again, it's just weird that we're in week 11 already. It feels like the season just started, but we're like knocking them down. It's gonna be another good slate of football games, and man, just have fun, man. Hopefully, you guys can hang out with some friends, sip some drinks. Oh, is that the baby?
Yeah, she just snuck in here. Snuck
That's
in
what's
here.
up. She
Gonna
trying to
take
be.
down the light too. All right, thank you. All right, we'll close things out here before I get pulled off the camera. But good luck to you guys in your fantasy matchup. Good luck in your sports betting. Download the Underdog app, Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS.
Yeah,
Catch me and Major on this show every single week, winning you guys money.
get it.